Good morning. I haven't been up here in a while. So I didn't know what the question was when I decided what I wanted to talk about a while ago. But when I told Kate what I wanted to talk about, she fitted into the question with her usual insight. This subject compelled me to speak as I'm immersed in it daily, as a physician and as a human being riding the roller coaster it has become. So it's about COVID. Have you noticed that COVID is the elephant in the room? A large looming presence that we try to ignore as we go through our days, but just never can. Even as we sit here in separate rows, wearing masks and not singing our favorite hymns together, we don't name it. We mention joys and concerns weekly, and I can't recall the last time COVID came up as an individual or group concern, and certainly not as a joy. We have lost over 700,000 souls to COVID in this country alone, millions across the world. And it's become so familiar as to be almost invisible. Routine in the way that many bad things like systemic racism and injustice are so common they become invisible until you make the effort to look, identify, and name the problem out loud. So I'm going to talk about COVID, the good, the bad, and the ugly. First, the good. I'll admit, there are many days that I'm hard-pressed to find any good. But in general, if you look hard enough at anything, some positives will emerge. I mean, who would have thought that kids would miss school? Children across the country were yearning to get back into school, into classrooms with live teachers and other kids. COVID has put a lens on how important and wonderful our educational system is in this country. People, including kids, have renewed respect for teachers and their roles in our society. Educators have become heroes, keeping kids from drowning during the dark days of the pandemic. We have all had a sharp reminder on the importance of family. As Joni Mitchell sang, and yes, I'm aging myself, you never know what you've got till it's gone. Even the family members we roll our eyes at over a Thanksgiving meal became precious when we were unable to be together. How much more did we miss our parents, siblings, children, and grandchildren, and realize they were the one thing we wanted more than any other? The inability to hug a child or a grandchild became a physical pain. I'm a bit of a loner by nature, an introvert who can be happy within my own company, but even I missed community. I especially missed this community in person. I know we did the best we could, but for me, there's nothing like sitting in this building, listening to the music in person, reciting the Lord's Prayer as one. Being back together in person, as well as spirit, brings tears to my eyes every time I walk through the doors. A reminder of how important this church, this experience, this community is to me. It reinforces my desire to preserve it for everyone and for anyone. Finally, COVID provided yet another spotlight on racial and economic inequity, as rates of infection and death were disproportionately higher in communities of color and areas of lower socioeconomic status. Both in our country and around the world, I believe that as a society we need to use these examples of injustice and have them thrown repeatedly in our faces. The more we are forced to see the ugly truth, the more likely we are to take action and institute change. So that was the good. I'm sure there are others. The bad. Does anybody want to call them out? We have economic impacts, job losses, business closures, social isolation, increased anxiety and depression, educational disruption and loss, skyrocketing rates of obesity, loss of routine health screening, death, lots of death, leaving families torn apart, children without parents and grandparents. I could keep going, but I'm not going to. The ugly. So what could be uglier than that? To me, the ugliest part of COVID is the way that something that should have united us as humans against a common, indiscriminate foe instead drove us farther apart into silos of economic, racial, and political division. A disease that is a matter of universal public health became instead a political touchstone. COVID, and how we respond to it, has turned brother against sister, children against parents. Science and medicine have become suspect as people struggle with who and what to trust. It has become us versus them, with no middle ground in which to communicate. I am left with the question of how do we heal the divide? How do we bridge the gap? From my space, I just want to keep people alive and safe. So why won't they listen to me and believe what I tell them? It's simple, right? It becomes so easy to be angry and judgmental of the other side, to believe in your own unquestionable rightness. But what good does that do? And how does it bring us closer? So, I'm trying to do the hardest thing, at least for me. I'm trying to lay my judgment down, along with the knowledge that I'm right, and then just listen. It's not easy. There are years of training urging me to push my views as correct, but it's the only way I can see to move forward. To accept this ugliness as a call to step into the gap as a respectful listener. If I listen quietly and with respect, then I can ask permission to talk. They may listen in turn, or they may say no, but I hope there's perhaps the beginnings of trust and a relationship. Maybe this could be the final good. If we as a people begin to listen with our two ears instead of incessantly talking with our one mouth, we might be able to start to close a lot of divides.